This movie disaster rocked the film industry and led to significant changes in it. But it was completely preventable, so how did it all go down, and how was the director acquitted of 3 murder charges? All that and more on today's episode. This is Talk Hollywood to Me. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talk Hollywood to Me, where I talk Hollywood to you. Every time I start these episodes, I have to resist the urge to start off like how Jacksepticeye starts off his YouTube videos. The temptation, I must say, is overwhelming, but consider yourself lucky that I did not choose to go with that kind of gimmick. Halloween is just around the corner, and I'd like to quickly suggest some of my horror and thriller film recommendations that you can find on Netflix, Hulu, Showtime, if you have the Spotify deal, and Amazon Prime. I will say that some of the movies I'm going to recommend have gore in them, so if you don't deal with that well, proceed with caution. This sounds cheesy, but the IMDb parental guide section on a movie highlights pretty well the content that's in a movie, so you can use that as a resource. Some of the ones I'm listing can be pretty cheesy or not that great, but I enjoy them nonetheless. On Netflix, we have Candyman, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, Scream, and Scream 2 and 3, The Witch, Insidious, Carrie, Green Room, Creep and Creep 2, Apollo 18, American Psycho, Mystic River, Shudder, The Sixth Sense, and 22 July, which covers a real mass shooting, so please be careful if you are sensitive to that kind of stuff. For TV shows, I, of course, recommend Mindhunter. Others that you're wondering why I didn't include, I most likely haven't seen them. One of them is Gerald's Game, as well as 1922, but I have heard good things about them. I'll also recommend Veronica and Eerie, even though I think the titles they got of scariest horror movie of all time when they first came out is a bit exaggerated, but then again, I'm relatively desensitized to horror and thriller things, so of course I have opinions. Hulu has a dedicated section of horror thriller movies under Huluween, but here are my recs anyway. A Quiet Place, a few of the Saw movies if you're feeling it, Child's Play, even though dolls terrify me, Hellraiser, the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, the original Amityville Horror, 1981's My Bloody Valentine, a personal favorite, The Orphanage, Primal Fear, Children of the Corn, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. For TV shows, I highly recommend The Terror and the OG Twilight Zone series and Alfred Hitchcock Presents for some classic horrors and thrillers. Showtime has a few good selections, including 3 of the Saw movies that Hulu does not have, ATM, The Babadook, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I've heard that The House That Jack Built is pretty freaky, Escape from LA, but I say that because Kurt Russell is in it, Reanimator, which is a giant favorite, They Live, The Assault on Precinct 13, which is more suspense than anything, but it's a good movie, Jacob's Ladder, which you should absolutely watch, and Zodiac. Lastly, we have Amazon Prime. I recommend Hereditary, Annihilation, The Love Witch, High Tension, and I also mention See No Evil and The Wrestler Kane, because, Jesus H. Christ, did that movie scare me as a kid when my mom and I rented it from Blockbuster, which is a very dated statement. Ju-on the Grudge, the original Japanese version of Dark Water, Silence of the Lambs, Seven, and for fun, I'm going to plug The Boondock Saints, which is not a horror at all. It's an action thriller, and I grew up watching that movie. Probably shouldn't have considering what's in it, but that's neither here nor there. I also have some movies of my own to recommend, and because I have them on DVD, I'd be more than happy to share a few of them if anyone listening to this on campus would want to borrow one. I'll list what I have, and you can look them up and see which one tickles your fancy. I have Akira, The Changeling from 1980, Get Out, Gone Girl, the original 1972 Last House on the Left, the original Murder on the Orient Express from 1974, Rear Window, Rope, The Shining, Stephen King's It, the 1990 miniseries that predates the 2017 version, Stephen King's Silver Bullet, Straw Dogs, and 2 that I always highly recommend, 1982's The Thing and 1988's The Vanishing. If you're interested at all, here's my email, sm1832@uncw.edu. A few other recommendations that I will give that you should try and find, some of which are already classics, but still. And after this, I will get into the episode. Poltergeist, Psycho, Rosemary's Baby, 1973's The Wicker Man, which is actually good, 1997's The Game, M from 1931, 1 hour photo featuring Robin Williams in a thriller role, and he did fantastically, Abre los Ojos, Autopsy and Crazy Eights, which are very cheesy, and those not great movies you'd find at Blockbuster, which is where I did find them, Sleepaway Camp, Eyes Without a Face, Alien and Aliens, Van Helsing, 2002's Cabin Fever, Signs, Let the Right One In, The Others, The Hills Have Eyes from 1977, Jaws, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, the original Black Christmas, Hostel, The Exorcist, Audition, Wait Until Dark, 1979's When a Stranger Calls, Blue Velvet, An American Werewolf in London, Don't Look Now, Funny Games, Eraserhead, Marathon Man, The Conversation, The Descent, Deliverance, Misery, Altered States, 1978's I Spit on Your Grave, and 2008's Martyrs. And I'll stop there and actually get the episode started now, okay? If you want way gorier and disturbing stuff, I can tell you those too if you email me at sm1832@uncw.edu. But moving on from that, we can talk about something scarier. People not being held criminally responsible for murder, even though they definitely killed people. Yep, this is Twilight Zone, the movie we're talking about now. And this may seem more like a true crime episode than anything, but since this happened during a movie, I've got to cover it, and I'm gonna. I should also note that due to what happened on set, there will be descriptions of graphic things, so if you are sensitive to that kind of stuff, please proceed with caution. Now, as you all may know, The Twilight Zone was a television series that ran for 5 seasons from 1959 to 1964, a grand total of 156 episodes, and was presented by its creator, Rod Serling. The show had 3 further revivals, the first coming in the 1980s, where it ran for 3 seasons with 65 episodes from 1985 to 1989. The second revival ran for 1 season with 43 episodes from 2002 until 2003. The last and most recent revival came on April 29th of this year. The 1983 film is also an anthology with different segments being directed by different people. Steven Spielberg directed the segment Kick the Can. Joe Dante, who did The Howling, Gremlins and Gremlins 2, and Looney Tunes Back in Action, did It's a Good Life. George Miller of Mad Max fame, as well as The Witches of Eastwick, Babe, and the 2 Happy Feet movies, did his own version of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, and John Landis, who has a laundry list of famous and well-known films, such as Animal House, a poster of which I have on my bedroom wall, The Blues Brothers, An American Werewolf in London, which I highly recommend, seriously, Trading Places, Spies Like Us, Three Amigos, and Coming to America, directed 3 segments: Prologue, Something Scary; Epilogue, Something Scarier; and what we'll be discussing today, Time Out. Time Out dealt with Bill Connor, who played by Vic Morrow, aged 53 and father of Jennifer Jason Leigh. Connor was a bigoted man who, after being passed over for a promotion that was given to a Jewish coworker, starts hurling various racial and anti-Semitic epithets at a bar with his friends. After leaving, he finds himself in Nazi-occupied France, being chased by Nazis. After falling from a building, he finds himself in the rural South in the 1950s, once again being chased, but by Klansmen who see him as a black man. After he jumps into a lake, he comes out and finds himself under fire in Vietnam. A grenade is thrown and he is sent back to Nazi-occupied France, getting captured, being loaded into a train's freight car with other Jewish people. Screaming out to his friends at a bar, they neither hear nor see him, and he is taken away. It's a story with a moral lesson that many Twilight Zone episodes had, but the filming of it was unlike any other in that by the end of it, 3 people were dead. The scene being filmed was when Bill Connor finds himself in Vietnam and, trying to right his wrongs, attempts to rescue 2 Vietnamese children, played by Renee Shi-Yin Chen and Micah Din Lee, ages 6 and 7 respectively. Children need special work permits in order to film at night, and filming was done in Indian Dunes, California at 2:30 a.m. on July 23rd, 1982, way later than children were permitted to work. To circumvent these child labor laws, they and their families were paid under the table, a special phrase which more or less is illegal employment, and the parents were on set. Morrow's scripted line before the accident: "I'll keep you safe, kids, I promise. Nothing will hurt you, I swear to God." He never got a chance to say this line. Filming happened in what the industry calls the studio zone, or the 30-mile zone, at the Santa Clara River. This wide-open area and varying topography allowed for a variety of options that could be used to replicate areas like Afghanistan and Vietnam. This was also an area that, due to its size, you could use pyrotechnics in it, so it was a no-brainer that filming should be done here. Now, John Landis was notorious for being an arrogant director, often swearing and cursing up and down, being extremely reckless, demanding, and stubborn. Lighting the scene proved to be difficult and required grips to climb a 30-foot scaffolding and endure rotor wash, a vertical downwash of air caused by helicopters flying at a low altitude, and naturally caused some of them to become nervous. John Landis is quoted as saying, "Is there somebody on this electrical crew who's not too chicken shit to do the job?" The film's helicopter pilot was Dorsey Wingo, a Vietnam veteran who had piloted helicopters before. Except he had never done film shooting before, and piloting a helicopter on set of a movie is a hell of a lot different than piloting one in real life. Wingo was therefore totally inexperienced, and the radio he and Landis used to communicate was later proven to be in not totally great quality, making communication difficult between the two. Landis also kept yelling at Wingo to fly the helicopter lower and lower, to the point that it was only about 25 feet above the ground. If you need a visual reference, a giraffe can grow to be 20 feet tall, so find your nearest giraffe, add a few feet on top, and you'll understand how close this helicopter was to the ground. And now we get into the accident. Vic Morrow had commented, "I've got to be crazy to do this shot. I should have asked for a double." John Landis was warned by camera operator Stephen Lydecker about the stunt, to which Landis replied, "We may lose the helicopter." Lydecker said Landis might have been joking, but, quote, "I learned not to take anything the man said as a joke. It was his attitude. He didn't have time for suggestions from anybody." Action was called and the pyrotechnics started to go off as Morrow ran with the two children under his arms. A blast was detonated, but the helicopter's rear rotor was above it, engulfing it in flames and causing Dorsey Wingo to lose control and forced him down towards the actors. The right skid crushed Renee Shin Yi Chen, and the rear rotor decapitated Morrow and Micah Dinley. All three died instantly. According to the testimony of roughly 100 people present, there was shocked and stunned silence. Nobody reacted until Chen's mother started screaming. It took 3 years for the case to go to trial. Warner Brothers, Landis, Wingo, production manager Dan Allingham, associate producer Dan Folsey Jr., and explosive specialist Paul Stewart were on trial in criminal court and later civil court for involuntary manslaughter. 71 witnesses were called to the stand by the prosecution over the course of 10 months, including Chen and Lee's parents. They, along with the casting directors and fire crew on set, were not told that there would be a helicopter or explosives there on the set. Landis and everyone charged had openly admitted that they had violated child labor laws by paying them under the table, but these charges were never brought up. Despite this, and despite all the evidence that has already been stated, the accident was called, quote, unforeseen and unforeseeable, and in May 1987, all were acquitted of the charges. In civil court, however, settlements were reached. Following the accident, new rules and laws were implemented by Hollywood to make sets safer, and though accidents occurred after which did involve death and or injuries, new rules and laws kept being made to make everything safer and safer. To this day, John Landis has never claimed responsibility for the accident. When he was pleading not guilty in criminal court, he said, quote, "I know in my head and I know in my heart that we did not cause the accident." He also said in interviews, quote, "What people tend to forget in all this is the helicopter crashed less than a foot from where I stood. It's not like he was removed from this somehow." After the ruling, Landis sent personal thank you notes and letters to the members of the jury for having and giving positive comments after the trial. Due to how he handled the accident, Steven Spielberg cut and severed all ties with Landis. He was reportedly highly upset about how Landis just straight up refused to take responsibility and cut contact. Spielberg said, quote, "No movie is worth dying for. I think people are standing up much more now than ever before to producers and directors who ask too much. If something isn't safe, it's the right and responsibility of every actor or crew member to yell, 'Cut.'" Following all this, Landis hasn't really done many notable things since Coming to America was released in 1988. You can say he's faded out of the limelight, which is pretty much the case here. It is, admittedly, a bit jarring to come into my room every day, see the Animal House poster with John Landis' name on it, and know full well that he's fully responsible for the deaths of 3 people. In criminal court, he isn't responsible. But if I learned anything from my forensics class that I had my junior year of high school, not guilty doesn't necessarily mean you didn't do it. But the film was released with the helicopter scene cut out and received mixed reviews from critics. And if you're wondering if the footage of the accident is out there, it is. I've seen it. If you really want to find it, you can find it, but you're going to watch it at your own risk. It's one thing to look up Joe Theismann's tibia and fibula get fractured and see his leg below the knee go into a right angle, but it's a whole other ballpark to watch this footage. If anything, a guilty verdict not being handed out in this case is perhaps the scariest thing of all. Happy Halloween. Well, this episode was a bit dark in tone, but real life is often scarier than fiction. So for the next episode, I'll find something a bit lighter to cover. The Hollywood Blacklist would take a good time to research, as would the making of Gone with the Wind, and talking about the Hays Code. Kenneth Anger's Hollywood Babylon is a book I'd have to read first, which I did buy. So let's go something with a little more fun. Scandals. I'm talking romance. I'm talking about actors being arrested for smoking pot, personal lives of celebrities, downfalls, and tragedies. It's going to be a fun time, so be sure to listen to the next episode when it comes out in a couple of weeks. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to let us here at Hawkstream know. And if you want more podcast content put out by us, We've got a couple more podcasts available that you can find on UNCW, TealTV.org/Hawkstream, or on iTunes and Spotify. But for now, I'll sign off. This has been Sierra with Talk Hollywood to Me, where I talk Hollywood to you. Have a great and safe Halloween. Hail to the King, baby.